Okay, that was pretty good. Pretty good. Okay, hello, welcome. Hello, world. It's me, Riley Soliner. This is Clash Clown. This is a podcast where I'm talking about being a clown and how it merges on the margins with other things that I like. We're still in the early phases, the early stages of doing this show. So thank you for being here as I figure this out. I'm probably going to be figuring this out for a while. But I'm starting to get some emails and feedback from people who've been listening. And I really, really, really appreciate it. And I'm happy to hold your attention for a little bit as I ramble on. I'm excited. Today is part of the plan for me to set the game pieces. This is, I think, the last game piece that I'll be moving around the game of this show, in terms of my main mentors, my main inspiration in the form of elders, teachers, very, very wise, compassionate, generous clowns that I've learned from. And I'm excited to talk about Gene E. Taylor, a teaching artist in New York City. So where was I? I guess this is 7 years ago. I had either just turned 30 or I was about to. And I was feeling everything that comes with doing that, with the added pressure of being an occasional side character on a failing TV show. Failing spectacularly, failing just the way we were kind of designed to. But I'm talking, of course, about the Chris Gethard Show, one of the most exciting, inspiring, fulfilling creative projects that I've ever been a part of. And if you don't know, well, I'm going to get way more into it next week. I think next week would be a great episode for me to take a little bit of a deeper dive into the Chris Gethard Show. But for today, long story short, this 1 in a million chance of this experimental live theater talk show turned experimental public access television show turned into a cable television show for a few seasons. And we were live. And it was the same cast and crew that had built the show, doing the show to that day. And I was lucky enough to be a fan turned member of the cast. And not only that, I was playing a character that I came up with. Vacation Jason, the world's #1 vacation expert, always on vacation. And part of the reason it meant so much to me is because I came up with this character at Camp Winter Rainbow, Wavy Gravy's summer camp. I invented Vacation Jason there. So for me to be bringing this product of this very meaningful time and place into my life into this other very meaningful time and place into my life, where I'm literally performing sketch comedy on television in New York City with one of my comedy mentors and heroes, Chris Gethard. It's like, it meant everything to me that I had seen the entire arc. I had been up close. I had been even celebrated for being a part of this entire arc of this show. It was a big, big deal. And everyone could read the writing on the wall that the show wasn't going to last much longer. And it was this kind of reeling, this almost kind of whiplash feeling of having these really exhilarating, exciting live television moments, and then feeling reality set in as the show got harder to produce with a free spirit amongst all the notes from network executives who didn't get it, amongst, feedback from people who really thought they knew everything about the show and how a show is made. It's hard to make a thing with a lot of eyes on you, relative amount of eyes. We didn't have enough eyes on us for the show to keep going, of course. That was part of it. It was too weird to be a show. For anyway, I could talk a lot more about I could talk about the Chris Gethard show for days and days. So I think maybe I'll save it all for next week. But the point is, it was kind of, one of my first and only jobs in like that level of entertainment, done a bit part on this late night show and that late night show, and I was auditioning for things, and nothing was really uh you know hitting. I wasn't really catching anything, and um I had really become kind of burnt out and discouraged by my place in the the live comedy scene that I was part of in New York. And I would have a lot of conversations with Elena, my wife, about, should I quit comedy? I'm thinking about quitting comedy. I don't know what to do. And that would weird her out. That would scare her. It scared me too, though. And I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And I ended up enrolling in a year-long acting program at the Barrow Group, a theater company in New York. And I'm so glad that I did, because I made a lot of new friends, and I'm really proud of the hard work that I did at that time. And I got a really great immersive lesson in how to read a script, how to prepare, how to be so well prepared that the lines that you have rehearsed feel so natural that you're able to, quote unquote, improvise in a scene, even with the constraints of just saying the lines on the page. It was really eye opening, and it brought me back to a time in high school when I was so serious about acting. And I'm really glad that I got to get back in touch with that version of myself. And it was also so encouraging to see myself through the eyes of everyone else in the class, because I at the time was doing very little recognition of how far I had come or the work that I had put in. It was very hard to feel like it was ever enough. But I had hundreds of shows and hours and hours of stage time under my belt through a decade of commitment to UCB and improv and sketch comedy and solo performance. But I just wasn't willing to give myself credit for any of it. And then to just be so comfortable on stage trying stuff out in a class where not everyone was at that everyone was at a different level of comfort. But I will admit that I felt very comfortable on stage, comfortable enough to just try things, try new things. And that went a long way in I don't know, making me feel like this was something that was still for me. And it required um, deepening uh, my relationship with a different aspect of working in theater. And so I was having a good time in this class. I think 4 days a week I was there for a year. And about 6 months of the way through the class, feeling very committed, very just faithful in this work, but still kind of holding comedy at an arm's length. Improv, didn't want to do it all. I got in the habit of telling people I'm not funny or not funny anymore or anything like that. And Seth Barish, along with Lee Brock, the founders and the head teachers at Barrow Group, who were teaching my class, they came in one day and they made an announcement that there's a really fabulous clowning workshop that Barrow Group is hosting, and it's going to be taught by Gene Taylor, who only teaches a couple times a year. So anybody who, if that sounds interesting to anybody, they should sign up today. And I knew that I had to. They certainly made it sound like a very interesting opportunity to seize. And also, as you know by now, I've had this background, this affection for this heightened sense of meaning when it comes to clowns and clowning. And all of my experience up until that point with clowning was something less conventional, so to speak, than clown in theater, right? Clowning on stage, sure, but more something along the lines of circus performance or street performing, the humanitarian clown thing as well. So, theatrical clowning brought to me by Barrow Group, my new school that I was so true to. I knew I had to be there. And the way Seth and Lee were talking up Gene Taylor, okay, yeah, let's go, And I've given Gene a compliment in the past about how I owe her everything. And she was very quick to brush that off. No, I don't. And maybe, in the moment, I was overcome with emotion when I was telling her this. And, maybe I don't owe her everything, but based on what happened next, it really at times emotionally does feel that way, because over the course of the workshops that I've taken with her, the chain of events that led to right now, I guess. I mean, it feels like this training was like a catalyst for some full circle moments that I am so grateful for. Okay. So with that being said, if you have a chance to take a class with Jean E. Taylor at Barrow Group, she only teaches a couple times a year. I highly recommend it. The feeling that she creates in the room for her students is so lovely and fun, and I think useful, whether you're trying to deepen your skill as a clown performer or you're just looking for something new and fun to do. No experience necessary. I cannot recommend learning from Jean E. Taylor enough. In fact, I will say, if you're taking a clown class with me at Brooklyn Comedy Collective, all I'm really doing is trying to do my best at recalling the feeling that I had when Jean Taylor was teaching me. Sometimes that means I'm ripping her off, and I'm just trying to do my best to honor, credit, emulate Jean Taylor when I'm teaching, among other teachers. But here, let's get into this. When I learned theatrical clown, which is a phrase I learned from Jean, Jean was the first person to say the name Jacques Lecoq. She's the first person who said the name Philippe Gaulier to me. Jean Taylor is the first person to tell me about Slava, the Russian clown Slava, with his snow show, the 25-year running snow show. And that was a life-changing experience, seeing that show. I credit all of that to Jean. I think Jean Taylor she had to have been the first person to tell me about Broadway legends Bill Irwin and David Shiner. If you want to Google them and see some elite level theatrical clowning work, look up Bill Irwin and David Shiner, either as a pair or both as solo performers. They are incredible. So suddenly, after all these years of holding on to and being and having this affection for like this splinter of like hippie clown activism, improv, poetry, humanitarian work, hospital clowning, suddenly I'm now dropped in to this line of work, this line of play where I'm my faith in comedy is being restored because of this work, right? After being burned out on doing too much improv, while the Chris Gethard show is coming to an end, and I'm not getting any more comedy work, and the only comedy work I've ever had that brought me a paycheck was this completely unlikely, once in a lifetime opportunity that's not coming around again. Um, I'm figuring out how to be funny on stage in a way that fills me up inside again. And it was Gene Taylor's theatrical clown class that did that. And I'm suddenly being given all these new resources, inspirations in the form of, Lecoq and Gullier, Slava, Bill Irwin, and David Shiner to be interested in, to nerd out about, to be proud of that, like, I'm getting more good nutrition, more like info that I can do something with. It was really, really, really exciting. So what else can I say? Jean Taylor, I really, I've spent a lot of time with her, but I really don't know a lot about her. And I have to assume that she's a relatively private person. So I don't want to say too much, and I don't want to fully give away everything that she teaches. But I want to say a few things that I've just picked up from Jean. And then my goal here is to relate that to just how I see theatrical clown as an art form that has inspired me both as a performer and more generally how these lessons, using a little bit of creative license, can be tools and inspirations, analogies for how to make life better for yourself and those around you. And that's the clash, that's the margin, that's the contradiction, that's the bleeding over into regular life that that I'm trying to make more of a mission statement in this show that maybe you've picked up on already, or maybe I don't know. I'm perfectionist here with this stuff, and I've held on to it for too long. So you know what? How about we just keep going? Gene Taylor is a teaching artist at Barrow Group, and right away, I I um I love the phrase teaching artist, and that's one phrase that Gene Taylor is insistent upon. Teaching artist, not just a teacher, but a teaching artist. And I really do see her style of teaching as an art form itself. The way that, I'm coming from decade plus of learning and coaching and teaching improv, which I've had some coaches and teachers that I would, you know, consider teaching artists, but not everyone is. And the system and the vibe of teaching improv is just such a looser thing and it's especially when it's people that are maybe new to it or have only been doing it for at most 10 years. So there's a lot of things unsaid in the room that you know it when you feel it, but not everyone knows how to conjure up an energy where everyone feels taken care of in the room, or that it feels like the instructor is having as much fun or is being provoked in thought as much as the people there to practice and work. I myself, I know that I coached and taught improv, burnt out from the art form for much longer than I should have before I decided to take a break. I was doing it to pay rent, which is hard. You got to log some serious hours coaching improv to pay rent. Bad move. But yeah, I was giving really direct, hard notes. I was impressed with nothing anybody was doing, and more often than not, the vibe in the room was probably. Um, I mean, if I was having a bad day, there was hostility in my improv coaching, and there was also, and to be fair, I think I'm remembering this with like some real heavy self-critical kind of shame. I mean, I just wasn't performing at the time, so I was only just kind of like I was kind of internally bitter about the fact that I wasn't performing, the fact that I quit this team that I worked so hard to be cast on, and that I was upset with the environment of that the UCB had created at the time, because it was just this fully competitive thing with one very specific unimaginative goal in mind: get cast on a team put together by the theater. And so it fostered a very unimaginative, restrictive, rigid way of playing, and that's what I was paid to facilitate. When I remembered a time when getting cast was one goal among a few. One of the goals in question: have fun with these friends that you're making, doing this art form that felt exciting and limitless, right? So, anyway, separated from that, but still like with the feeling of an improv class and an improv coaching session, an improv practice session in my bones, I was feeling, and also just, no longer confident in my comedy performing and acting and improvising. I'm not funny anymore. I'm going into this class with Gene Taylor, and yes, this teaching artist did such a good, natural job at making everyone feel welcome and calm, but also excited about the possibilities of what this work brings out in people. Theatrical clowning. And what is theatrical clowning? The definition that I've come to uh, utilize, I guess, is it's a, among other things, it's a practice of dissolving the fourth wall. And I learned all of this from Gene. All these vocab words that I put out in episode 0: complicité with your scene partner, and the public, right? The public, and Auguste, the the optimistic, playful, silly Auguste, right? This is all Gene Taylor. All learned from her. Le jeu, the joy of performing, the joy of showing the public something that your pleasure, and creating that upward spiral of pleasure and excitement and sincerity with the public. That's all Gene Taylor. I credit my understanding of those concepts that I now teach to Gene Taylor. Um, okay, when people are so confused about where the line is with clown, right? Or what is a clown, right? Or what are we doing here? The line that Gene Taylor says is, clown is a level of theater. Clown is a level of theater. And I love that. And it's true. Do I need to elaborate? Oftentimes, clown is a level of theater, dot, 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 just as a way to start a sentence. Clown is a level of theater where the performer is inviting connection with the audience. That's a pretty good sentence. I think that's true. Clown is a level of theater where curiosity and joy in the performer is the is the driving force. Something like that. I think if you're having trouble talking about clown to a friend, one good place to start is clown is a level of theater, and then fill in the blank. See what that does for you. See if you get anywhere. Of course, Jean Taylor is responsible for one of the most important acting notes I've ever received when she told me that the joy is subversive enough. Another story I'm rehashing from episode 0. Yes, where I was being a little stinker. Another habit, being a contrarian and a kind of an asshole, right? And kind of taking up a little too much space without considering the public, right? This is another habit that I learned through many, many years performing in my early, mid, late 20s at UCB. I'm picking up what UCB is throwing down, right? And at the time, a lot of the performers being championed were dudes, man. Dudes who were impolite. And that seemed so cool. And you know what? They were also incredibly committed and dexterous when it came to the fundamentals of improv, so they could get away with a lot, right? We're watching dudes getting away with a whole lot because we knew they were smarter than the characters they were portraying, but man, they were having fun letting loose with these dirty ideas, with these fucked up concepts, with breaking the rules of improv you're not supposed to break, right? Because it was so insular and such a almost like a clubhouse, such a secret handshake that like the audiences were then savvy enough to understand the differences between good and bad improv. And so a bad improv move would get an even bigger laugh than a good move because it's like a shitty white jazz. So my instincts are not to mention my version of breaking the rules and getting away with it and being a little stinker and a shit and an asshole was working so well for me that I was on the Chris Gethard show as my shithead character, Vacation Jason. Like almost like if you want to, some people have called that a clown character. That's more like a sketch comedy character, but there was in the context of the Chris Gethard show, I was kind of being like a court jester, right? And I was being rewarded for it. And so I remember, maybe it wasn't the first, but it was one of these Jean Taylor workshops that I was in where I was on stage tasked with making a connection and making the audience laugh, and I'm being a jerk. And I'm not using words, but I'm being a fucking little stinker. Like I know like it usually works for me, but I'm verbal and I have a persona and this and that. But I'm like, I'm going for gross out here. I'm trying to burp. I'm trying to, just it's uncomfortable, right? And it's the joy is subversive enough that kind of just knocked open a new door for me, a new way to look at theatrical clown and a new way to look at myself doing this. Gotta credit Gene with that. It broke me out of it helped me reconsider a lot. I think it was on day 1 of the first clowning workshop that I took with Gene Taylor that it really felt like, oh, this is it. This is the thing. I found the thing. And I don't want to get too into it because it's her signature exercise in her signature class, right? But she has an exercise where, borrowing from Alexander technique, which is an acting technique which melds just being hyper aware and attentive to your body movement, breathing, and what you're saying and doing. It melds that with just this exercise having to do largely with stage presence, stillness, and deliberate movement. And in this exercise, in giving the example for the exercise, I remember a moment where Gene Taylor is standing with her back to us, the students, and she just very deliberately, quickly turned her head and made direct eye contact with me. And it was in that moment, just a simple head turn and eye contact, where it was like, it was, and I think I've described it this way with other things before, but just like lightning bolt straight down directly into the crown of my skull. And it just felt like, oh, this is a new understanding. This is great possibility and inspiration being beamed directly to me. And it was this exercise that she does is so incredible. And here's another, and it's that stillness that helped me reconsider what I knew about physical comedy, or even just being a presence on stage, about how engaging stillness can be. Stillness as like punctuation for movement, rather than constantly being moving and filling every bit of silence with another joke or another thing to do, but just how important punctuation in the form of stillness in this language of moving on stage meant to me. Totally opened my eyes to something new. Stillness as a clown. I love being still as a clown. It's one of my favorite things. It keeps the audience guessing. What is he going to do next? It siphons all of the psychic energy in the room to these 2 points, the performer and the audience member that's being connected with. I now perform as the Grim Reaper, I can get more into that later, but it comes from many years of being inspired and entertained by portrayals of the Grim Reaper in movies and TV. And the Grim Reaper is still stoic. And it's so fun to play with that trope, both playing true to it and subverting it when I'm not still. But so much of the work in Gene Taylor's classes and workshops is noticing the stories that just pop up in an audience's head when a clown is still. And all the micro expressions, all the little involuntary movements that a performer just makes when they think they're being still. And then noticing what happens when that performer starts moving, because we're paying such close attention as an audience that we start to pay attention to how they're moving, even if they're moving, just getting up from a chair or moving from one point in the room to another, and how engaging, how interesting it is to see someone move without putting too much mustard on it. And that brings me to singularity of purpose. That's a phrase that Gene Taylor will use a lot during this exercise of stillness and motion. When the clown has singularity of purpose, when their eyes are fixed on one thing, whether it's a prop, an audience member, a point in space, that singularity of purpose turns what can be a nothing moment, a drab moment, a moment that isn't noticed, into something that becomes the most significant thing happening at that moment. To have singularity of purpose is one of the great exercises and concepts that Gene Taylor passes on as a clown teaching artist. And then there's, of course, we've all experienced this if we've watched any type of clown. But I think the words that Jean uses when she says clowns doing ridiculous things in a serious way and doing serious things in a ridiculous way means everything. I'm just kind of rattling off these different things that I've learned from Gene at this point. I think it had to have been Gene Taylor that had first explained to a class that I was in that the clown, especially the Auguste clown, is an expert in knowing nothing. An expert in knowing nothing. And this, of course, brings me back to the fool, the archetype of the fool, an expert in knowing nothing, similar to someone who just looks forward without a plan in joy, or someone who just derives pleasure from something very simple, or someone who acts like they know, even though we can tell they don't, but someone who is crafty and sure, yeah, okay, I'll try, I'll go for it, yeah. Which, for some reason, something just clicked with that, where even with years and years of improv experience under my belt and being so jaded by the process after a certain point, one of the first things you learn on the first day of an improv class, your first improv class, is of course the yes and, but not to deny yourself, right? Or not to play the novice to the point where you're going like, oh, it's my first time flying an airplane, and then the whole scene then becomes about how you don't know how to fly an airplane, and the scene is so limited and boring because of that, right? You've been there if you're listening to this. Oh, I don't know how to make a pizza. Do you put the cheese on first? And then your scene partner is then tasked with being the instructor. And then it's just another instruction scene, right? But to be a clown, to be a being that is an expert in knowing nothing, both means that you can liberate yourself to just doing something and being fine with whatever outcome, because you're trying and you're enjoying and you're bringing the audience in on your joyful experience, right? An expert in knowing nothing. So you can do the thing poorly or completely wrong, or just the way a space alien would do it, someone completely unsocialized to the modern world. And it's right. It's just make that choice. Just go for it. An expert in knowing nothing. Right? I feel like there's Zen in that. There's that beginner's mind, Zen mind kind of philosophy in that. And that goes a long way as performing as a clown. It's also, I got to credit another quote to Jean. Maybe she got this from someone else, but the clown is not undone by dilemma. She would oftentimes critique a student's clown act by gently suggesting that there wasn't any dilemma in it. Maybe they're doing something funny, but there's no dilemma. There's no challenge. There's no dilemma, right? Do I need to elaborate that? But when there is dilemma, we don't want to see the clown grumble and get frustrated and throw down whatever they're working on and lose it. We want to see a flop. We want to see that moment of being thrown off, that moment of maybe failure and trying again. We want to get behind, we want to root for the clown in what they're doing, right? But to be undone by dilemma completely takes us away from the goal of that endearment, of that connection, of that bond, of that beautiful moment that we're looking for. The clown is not undone by dilemma. So I also think this is one of those things that's just very important to hold on to as a clown character that you're performing, but also as a clown performer that you are living as. To be undone by dilemma? No. That's not what we do here. We remain open. We remain persistent. We do the best to remain optimistic as we look for another way. We are experts in knowing nothing. And that's not a pessimistic statement either. We know nothing. We can look at the future. We know nothing. Something good might happen. Maybe. We got to be honest about what we're seeing when we look around, but we're not only seeing terrible things. Shout out to David Lynch. I'm thinking about him a lot after his passing. And the way that he would look at the world and how it probably took him decades and all those years of meditation and all those years of living simply for the art that sustained him to look at the world simply enough to enjoy his friends and his art and the nature of the world around him. It's possible. I would say continue looking to those inspiring folks that are able to, sure, dip into nuance and say something and react to something when necessary, but also make a practice out of dipping into a very simple world where something as simple as a cup of coffee in the morning is recognized as a blessing. So that's my David Lynch tangent as I'm talking about Gene Taylor. Didn't expect to do that. The clown is not undone by dilemma. Where else do I want to take this right now? I guess it must have been Gene Taylor who first described the red clown nose as the smallest mask. This is something I'm assuming she picked up from either Christopher Bayes or Jacques Lecoq or Philippe Gaulier. And this for me has been essential. The smallest mask. And just thinking about the red nose as a mask that does the work. I feel like I'm going to repeat myself a little bit from episode 0, but it's confusing that there is an episode 0 and that maybe some of you who've listened to episode 1 thought that was the first episode. Whatever. There's an episode 0, and I might have talked about clown noses in it, but I'm going to talk about them again. In Gene Taylor's classes, part of the reason it was so influential for me is because this red nose, this symbol that I had been familiar with in a past life in a different context, was given reverence like I feel a red nose should be given. And so I just felt very taken care of and on the same page with Jean as she handed out these noses one by one and asked us not to put it on right away and spoke about the significance of it and the usage of it. A phrase that I use when I teach now and I give out noses is, Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. I want those new clowns holding these new noses to, if anything, be the reason that someone likes clowns, be the reason that someone reconsiders whether or not clowns are a scary thing. I'm going off on my own tangent here. The smallest mask, when you put it on and you go, hey, I'm a clown, it loses some of the magic that it inherently holds. I think that there's something really important about learning how to pretend you're not wearing a mask as you're wearing it. There's something really important about taking in the way people are looking at you when you wear it with no assumption of what a clown is supposed to be. And there's something really important about what Jean Taylor does in her classes, and I try to emulate in mine, about the reverence of the power of this imagery of the mask, of the smallest mask, of the red nose, and giving ample space and time and attention to, I guess you could call, charging it up with some kind of energy, of bringing some kind of gratitude. And even if you're pretending for a little bit that this nose that you're holding is capable of something that we're not fully aware of and we're not fully in control of, but this power, this conjuring, this being that it invites out of us. When I teach this spiel that I've kind of developed through teaching clown at Camp Winter Rainbow and now at Brooklyn Comedy Collective has morphed into this concept of the clown nose is the mask, but it's a mask that reveals more than it conceals. And so while it is technically physically covering your face, this nose is not just a mask. It's like a window. It's a window into the wearer's joy and curiosity and playfulness that resides within the wearer. And it's not just a mask and it's not just a window, but it's a lens through which the wearer can see the world in a different way. The red nose, when given proper attention, care, reverence, is like a lens that bends how the wearer sees reality. Maybe through softer or brighter colors, or the lines aren't so rigid, or maybe they're just seeing the world through fresh eyes. And this lens, this window, we then see that clown with different eyes, and they see us with different eyes that they're just getting used to using, and they're enjoying being in charge of this body. It then becomes a body thing. This is huge with Jean Taylor teaching clown. The way that she would facilitate us waking up with new eyes, and and maybe she would put on some fun music, and then it becomes this opportunity to just feel the music, not intellectually, just feeling. And that may become either just people stretching, or just wiggling, just feeling the music the way that it feels good for them to feel it without thinking too hard. And then that can kind of become something that morphs into a new dance move. And the way that Jean Taylor would encourage us to just be proud of the way that we're moving, because only each individual has that individual move. And it becomes this liberating thing where I, as someone who, can be funny, right, at that time, through making an ass out of myself through what I'm saying, or this court jester, the way that I would tease Chris Gethard or the audience of the Chris Gethard show, or even being ridiculous in the world of the comedic professional wrestling parody show that I was doing at the time. I can make an ass out of myself. I can portray, I can embody, I can move in these comedic ways and not have too much of an ego about it. But dance with joy? No, I'm not doing that. But I'm doing that in this class, in this setting, in a clown nose. And it's just a very freeing, very fun, very liberating experience. And it's as simple as having fun dancing, but it can take some people a lot to get to that place. And I don't think that you're going to find that many people who can do it better than Jean Taylor. The way that she does it, the fun that she's having, the compassion, the open-mindedness, the patience that she has as she's bringing people there. What a gift. I don't know where I would be without her, her clowning training. Okay, what else? The red nose as a mask, as a window, as a lens. And then here's one more from me. The red nose is a bullseye. It's a red circle right on the center of your face. And society, we call out people that we're ridiculing as clowns. We look at clowns as avatars of foolishness and failure, right? Losers, nincompoops. And there's something freeing about getting comfortable wearing that bullseye on your face and letting people look at you with disdain and letting people look at you like you're crazy or I could never do that. Right? And sometimes they mean it in a nice way, but sometimes it's funny that, it takes doing a lot of this to get comfortable calling yourself a clown, right? But I like calling myself a clown. Anyway, over the years since 7 years ago, I've taken many classes with Jean Taylor. For a minute there, she and Barrow Group co-founder Seth Barish taught this experimental class. They co-taught it together where it was half clowning and then half analyzing story structure, which is a major element of Seth and Lee's acting class, utilizing story structure to devise new clown material. And I took that class, and I'm so fucking happy that I did, because back to Chris Gethard, after the Chris Gethard show ended, he had a project where he went back to public access, but every week he produced a different comedian's idea on public access. And everyone could do whatever they wanted for 1 week. And whenever I got to do my 1 week, I did a clown show. And this was a huge dream of mine. I got to do a 60-minute clown show on public access 3 times. And it's called Klon. And I can go more into Klon later. But the genesis of how I even figured out how to write Klon and make it possible. How do you make a 60-minute live clown television show? I was able to do it through this class where Jean Taylor and Seth Barish taught how to devise some clown material. So I got to credit Jean Taylor with the genesis of Klon. I pay tribute to Jean all 3 episodes of Klon are me flexing what Jean Taylor taught me in her classes, mixed with what I knew to be possible at Manhattan Neighborhood Network Studios through my time at the Chris Gethard Show. That's like one, again, one, along with the Chris Gethard Show. I mean, Klon was such a moment. It's like a point of pride for me that I was able to pull that off and have so much fun doing it and bringing in all these inspirations in the form of my friends from different scenes, man. But yeah, the seed planted there by Jean and Seth. And I also got to credit Jean Taylor with she put together this really incredible performance / party at a barn at one of America's oldest artist collectives in Woodstock, New York. And I made it really clear to Elena that it was very important that I go to this. And I would love for her to go with me to this. And we made it there. And I got to perform there. And it was a great honor to play there and see some other clowns there. And it was during another clown's performance. I'm sitting next to Elena when, after years of watching me gain curiosity and skill and excitement over this clown thing, Elena was very happy for me, but it was just, even as a very skilled, accomplished improviser, she didn't want to do clown. She didn't want to take a class. And it was during another performer's clown act at this party performance that Jean had put together that Elena leaned to me and quietly whispered, "I think I'm ready to take a clown class." And that was such a moment. That was such an exciting moment, a proud moment for me, that this event, that this environment, that these performers that Jean had fostered had made Elena curious enough to go, I think I'm going to try this. And it turns out she's fucking terrific at doing her clown. It's so funny. It's so great. And I hope you get to see it one day. She doesn't do it very often, but Elena and I were clowns together, which is ridiculous and serious. I think I know I'm forgetting something. I'm forgetting a lot. But is it clear how much I owe to Jean E. Taylor and her theatrical clown education and training and encouragement and inspiration? I think I covered most of it for now. And I want to thank you for listening. Unless I remember something in the next couple minutes of rambling, I think that's going to be it. I think that just about covers it. I know I'm gonna, as soon as I finish recording, I'm gonna remember something else. But I think that's a solid episode for today. I think I got most of that out, and I want to thank you again for listening. And it's getting exciting because these are the episodes where I knew what my plan was, and we're rapidly approaching the cliff, the drop off point where the plan is kind of invisible. So we're gonna see what happens next. I think next week it would be good for me to talk about the clash in Clash Clown, and that means my my dubious cred as a punk rocker. I don't think I'm fully accredited there. But I'm a fan. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of punk rock music, dude. And I'd like to talk about how that informs my clowning and comedy and art, if that's okay. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. clashclownpod@gmail.com is the email address if you'd like to share your thoughts, suggestions, critiques. If you got a good joke or a bit you want to start with me, or if you just want to, if you also just like, if you'd like to tell people that you're listening to a clown ramble about his influences and musings, I would appreciate that. This isn't, as of this recording, it's not on Spotify or Apple or anything. I'm going to get there. But yeah, I got to stick the landing better next time. But thank you all for being here. And bye for now. Bye. You want me to, here, I got my fucking, here, I got this. I got, ha, along. Thank you so much. Bye for now. Bye. 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 Bye.